What Aurobindo represents in the history of the Earth's spiritual progress is not a teaching, not even a revelation. It is a mighty action straight from the Supreme. In the eternity of becoming, each avatar is only the announcer, the forerunner of a more perfect future realization. And yet, men have always the tendency to defy the avatar of the past in opposition to the avatar of the future. Now again, Sri Aurobindo has come announcing to the world the realization of tomorrow. And again, his message meets with the same opposition as of all those who preceded him. But tomorrow will prove the truth of what he revealed, and his work will be done.
Thank you, everyone. On such a wonderful occasion of Sri Aurobindo's 149th birthday, going into 150th, which the whole world is celebrating right now with a lot of energy and creativity, and also the 75th birthday of India independence. We are very happy to be here today. And as a part of today's program, Ambika will read the message on 15th August, and then we will continue on the program. One second. Hold on one second. They have photos in yeah.
Hi, everyone. If we learn to live within we infallibly awaken to this presence within us, which is our more real self, a presence profound, calm, joyous, and puissant, of which the world is not the master, a presence which, if it is not the Lord himself, it is the radiation of the Lord within. The truth of ourselves lies within and not on the surface.
Thank you, Ambika. Today's program is, you may have seen, is our own Govind ji. Going to take us through the topic which was chosen, sadhana through love and devotion. I think this is a wonderful topic. So, Govind ji, please continue.
Sure, thank you, Yogi. Can you hear me? I'm coming through. Okay. If I need to be louder or more clearer, please let me know.
Perfect.
And I've got an HD camera, so as long as people can see my beautiful face clearly, that's all that's important anyway. Even if you can't hear me. So, yes, today is a great occasion, wonderful day, August 15th. And despite all this stuff that's going on in the world and around us, you just can't help being happy to be able to celebrate it. And that also with all of us together, all the important people together. And it's such an amazing occasion. And our center is has this unique distinction that we celebrate not just one celebration, not just two, but we have 3 or 4, because we celebrate, first of course, Sri Aurobindo's birthday, the appearance of Sri Aurobindo on earth. We secondly also celebrate India's Independence Day, because we are kind of a Indian nationalist center also, because we are very much lovers of India. But we also celebrate what is called VJ Day in the West, VJ, which is Victory Over Japan. And again, it's very interesting to keep reminding people that it's even in Sanskrit, it becomes Vijay Day, the day when the Axis forces were defeated conclusively, and the war, the World War II, which Sri Aurobindo himself called the Mother's War, ended in the victory for the mother. And it ended on August 15th, which is Sri Aurobindo's birthday, as another sure sign of the action of Mother and Sri Aurobindo on earth, and the decisive role and the part that they played in this greatest of all human conflicts that has ever happened. And finally, of course, we are celebrating Ambika's birthday. So once again, happy birthday, Ambika. And Ambika, do you mind reading the last line of that the card again, if you don't mind, if you still have it with you, or I can read it.
Let me just bring it up. The last line is, the truth of ourselves lie within and not on the surface.
Right. The truth of ourselves
Lies within.
lies within and not on the surface. Thank you. Thank you, Amina. So this is actually a very good segue into the talk itself. Just to give a little background how this topic came about. The topic, as Vivek was saying, was sadhana through love and devotion. So this was not something that I myself chose. Basically, I was contacted by Sampada, or very beloved Sampada, and he asked me to, or requested me to give a lecture on this topic for a university and a course that he's actually organizing in that university in India. And this lecture is actually 2 weeks later. It's not yet happened. But initially I thought that if I'm going to speak anyway, why not I try to speak at the center first, so it's kind of a trial run, and you get acclimatized to the topic. But along the way, I realized that the audiences were completely different, because uh, in the university, you have an academic audience, you have people who are basically students and whose interests are much broader. So who have come there basically for knowledge. Their scope or core mission is not bhakti itself. They are more there for jnana. But we as a group, we are all a group of bhaktas. And of course, we aspire for jnana, but we are all devotees of Madan Shivavindo. So essentially, it has become a completely different talk. And it helps because it is a much more intimate, close environment of fellow seekers and people that I know who know me. So I can be much more free and just talk from my heart, rather than my mind, so to speak. So hopefully that's what will come through, and we'll see how that goes. Okay, so coming back to that line, the truth of ourselves lies within and not on the surface. So if we are going to talk about sadhana, again, which is yoga, sadhana through love and devotion, which is another way of saying bhakti yoga, then it's a very good starting point to define what do we mean by yoga. And there are many yogas in the world, and there are many types of yogas, but there is, generally speaking, only one spiritual yoga which comes in many flavors, and it is one because its objective is one. And that objective, Shivabindo here says, is to find this truth of ourselves, that what we are right now, or who we think we are right now, the role that we are playing at this moment, and the identity that we possess is not the truth. It is merely a temporary form that each of us has assumed. And who is this us which has assumed this form? That us, that I, is the truth of ourselves. And where does that truth lie? It lies within and not on the surface, which is what we appear on the surface. So getting to this truth of ourselves, getting to this true inner self, is the signature, the characteristic, the fundamental action and objective of any spiritual yoga. And of the spiritual yogas also, we are I'm sure very familiar with a lot of them. Familiar, not experts. I cannot claim to be an expert. I'm sure anybody on this call won't be, but we are all familiar with many of these flavors, which are different types of spiritual yogas. One of the most famous, of course, is the yoga which is based on the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, which is supposed to be the authoritative text on yoga itself. And the yoga of the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali is generally referred to as Raj Yoga, or the royal yoga. And that yoga concerns itself with the control of the mind, with developing siddhis, and essentially bringing out all of the occult and spiritual possibilities and potentialities which are latent in a human being and a human soul. But the yoga that we are more familiar with, which we hear much more about, is what's called the Trimarga, or the triune yoga. And this is the triplets, so to speak, that we hear about very often, which is, and most of us know about them. One is Karma Yoga, the another one is Jnana Yoga, and the third one, of course, the topic of the day today is Bhakti Yoga. And it is a very interesting question to ask ourselves, why is it that we have three yogas in this combination, so to speak? Why don't we have, let's say, 2 yogas or 4 yogas or 5 yogas? It would be, rather than three yoga, it can be chatur yoga, it can be pancha yoga, it can be shat yoga or sapta yoga. Why is it that these three are supposed to go together? or that there is some kind of a deep relationship between them. And this is a question that I've not come across many people asking. Most people just accept it. But it's a very interesting question to ask. And I think one of the reasons is, as we go back to the definition of yoga, which is to get back to the truth of ourselves, which is the divine truth. What is it that our tradition, the Hindu tradition or the Indian tradition or the yogic tradition, what does it say about the divine? How does it describe or define the divine? There are any number of definitions, any number of descriptions. There is no limit and there is no end. It is like an ocean in itself. But fundamentally, we say that the divine can be described by three attributes which always go together. And the name of the divine that derives from those three attributes, again, is very familiar to us. It is Sat Chit Ananda, Satchidanand. That is immediately recognizable to any of us, that this is the divine. When you say Satchidanand, it is the divine. And when you say divine, it is Satchidanand. And it is very clear that there are these three different attributes, Sat, Chit, Anand. And it is so interesting that there is an almost exact parallel with the different yogas here. So if we look at the first yoga, let's say, is Jnana Yoga, right? So Jnana Yoga, what is the starting point of a Jnani or a person who is seeking Jnana, or a Jignasu, as we say in our tradition? The starting point cannot be Jnana, because if you already had Jnana, you wouldn't need to do Jnana Yoga. It has to be the opposite of Jnana, which is Ajnana, or ignorance. So the starting point of the Jnana Yogi, the problem that he is trying to solve is he's trying to solve the problem of ignorance. And what is it that he's seeking? He's seeking knowledge, and not just any knowledge. This is not a knowledge that we can get from books. It is not a knowledge that we can get from universities. This is the Param Jnana, the supreme truth. So what is the goal? What is the fruit of Jnana Yoga? The fruit of Jnana Yoga is this supreme knowledge, or the supreme truth, which corresponds to the first attribute of the divine, which is Sat. This is what Jnana Yoga, or Jnana, the path of Jnana, takes us to. And the method of Jnana, as is traditionally understood, is to take sannyas. If you are a true Jnani, then you will essentially end up on a monastic path, in the traditional sense, not necessarily in a modern or universal sense, but mostly that if you are a sadhu, you're a sant or muni, or even if you look at the Buddhist traditions, if you're a bhikkhu or a Jain muni, or any of these other paths, even modern day, if you look at Ramakrishna mission, which is very knowledge centered, or you look at Chinmayananda mission, which are very popular today also, they are basically an order of monks, a monastic order, and their aim is Jnana, because their path is that of Jnana, and they are seeking the supreme truth, and that's why they are very knowledge focused. So you see this correlation between Jnana Yoga and the Sat attribute of the divine. Now, if you look at Karma Yoga, Karma Yoga, what does it start with? What is its problem? What is the issue that is really the focus of the Karma Yogi? And this has been very, very, very beautifully captured in the Bhagavad Gita, which is the scripture of Karma Yoga par excellence, which Aurobindo even called it that. And it is symbolized in the problem that Arjuna is facing, which is that he wants a way out. He's looking for a escape from his predicament, where he's caught in the situation. He has to commit this horrendous and horrible karma, because his dharma itself is propelling him to do it. So the whole question of karma is something that the Gita is pregnant with, which is what Arjuna has to deal with, and which is what Sri Krishna then advises him about. Okay, you have to know what is karma. He says, akarmanascha bodhavyam, vikarmanascha bodhavyam. You have to know what is non-action, what is action, what is good action, what is bad action. And there's a lot of explanation of this in the Gita. So the problem that Arjuna starts out with, that the Karma Yogi in general starts out with, is this problem of being bound by karma. And the solution that he is seeking, which he does not himself know, but Sri Krishna constantly tells him that, is mukti. Mukti from karma bandhan. And that is why in the Hindu or the Indian tradition, we see that we have these four purusharthas: kama, artha, dharma, and the last purushartha is moksha. So it is very interesting that moksha is actually placed as a purushartha. A purushartha is an objective or an aim or a purpose towards which you have to direct your efforts, towards which you have to direct your action. So it is something that takes effort. It's something that takes your participation, and you have to put your action towards that. So moksha is actually originally, mukti is something that derives from this aspiration for a human being to get liberation from action itself through action. So again, the aim here is liberation or freedom. And if you look at it, this corresponds very neatly with the second attribute of the divine, which is the chit. Because that which is conscious is free, that which is unconscious is bound. The only means to get freedom is to become more and more and more conscious. And in fact, even we say, Sri Aurobindo also said that chit is essentially, or really it is chit shakti. So jema shakti che is swatantra. Whatever has shakti is free, has freedom. And you see, there is such a beautiful correlation between the chit attribute of the divine and karma yoga. And so here the path is not renunciation. The path, as the Gita very beautifully describes it, is tyag. Because the distinction between renunciation and tyag is that in renunciation, you give everything up. While in tyag, you sacrifice, you offer, while you still have it. You are no longer its possessor. You are merely the instrument. Nimitta matra, as Krishna says. Tyaga shantiram antram. That once you do tyag of anything, you will immediately have peace. And here, for the karma yogi, the signature, the sign is sincerity. Because for a karma yogi, he has to stay within the world. He has to stay among all the things which he has to sacrifice. But at the same time, he has to be able to do it very really. And that is one of the most difficult things. What is the greatest obstacle? What is the greatest obstacle for the karma yogi? The greatest obstacle, as the Gita points out, is kama esha. It is desire. Because what is it that ties you to that which you have to do tyaga of? The thing that ties you is desire. The thing that enslaves you is desire. That is why you see in all spiritual disciplines, there is such a great emphasis on getting rid of or destroying any trace of desire. As Krishna says in the Gita, Jahi Shatrum Mahavaho Kamarupam Durasana. Destroy this great enemy who is such a great harasser of any sadhak on this path. Destroy this desire. So in the first instance, in Jnana Yoga, or the path of Jnana, the primary obstacle, the starting point, is ignorance. And in the second path, which we're talking about now, which is Karma Yoga, the greatest obstacle, the starting point, is this state of slavery to desire. And that brings us to the third yoga, which is our topic of discussion today. And I just wanted to give this background because I think it very neatly gives us an idea of what Bhakti Yoga really is about. So, with the Bhakti Yoga, what is it that the Bhakti Yogin starts with? What is his starting point? And there we see that it is the opposite of Bhakti or opposite of this path. Because Bhakti no jo opposite say is selfishness. It is egoism, completely being self-centered. And this goes to the very root of our problem, because the main obstacle in the path of every seeker, apart from ignorance and desire, is our friend that we talk about always, and which we actually are all the time. It is the ego. So the starting point of the Bhakti Yogi, the problem that he's trying to solve, the greatest obstacle in his path is everything that he is, everything that we are, everything that we consider ourselves to be, which is the ego. And his whole focus is to directly remove all traces of egoism from within himself. And there can be nothing more difficult apart from probably the other two, which is getting rid of ignorance, getting rid of desire. Getting rid of ego is possibly the most difficult thing anybody can think of doing. And yet, there are people who say that Bhakti Yoga is the easiest way. Now, you have to ask yourself, are these people mad? If it's the most difficult thing in the world, how can you say that this is the easiest path? But there is a secret here. And this is one of the specialties or the khubiyat, as we say, of Bhakti or Bhakti Yoga. That if your problem is also the greatest, that you're going directly against this fundamental, essential aspect of your personality, this ego consciousness, the key is that what is your goal? What is your objective? If your starting point is the ego, what is on the other side? And the beauty in Bhakti Yoga is that the what is on the other side, the what in that question becomes who. Because now we are no longer talking about an abstract notion like jnana. Jnana suche kone kore, we don't know. We can read descriptions. But again, it's very hard to get an idea also of what it is. If you want moksha and mukti, again, it is an abstract notion. We can relate to it, surely, but to form a concrete idea of it is very difficult. So for both of these other yogas, at the other end, on the other side, is something that is abstract, something that is difficult to conceive of even. But what is there on the other side of Bhakti Yoga? The what becomes a who. So we have to ask ourselves, who is on the other side? Who is there waiting for us? And not just waiting for us. It is a person. It is a being. And not just any person. Not just any being. But the person. The supreme person. The ultimate being. That is our goal in Bhakti Yoga. And therein lies the entire power and majesty and secret of Bhakti Yoga. Because since jnana cannot do anything to come towards you, nor can mukti, but the Lord, the Supreme, the Divine, is a conscious being, is the super conscious being. And not only that, but he is somebody who wants to help you. He is somebody who wants you to do yoga. This is the beauty of yoga, at least not just of bhakti yoga, but any yoga. That normally human people don't want yoga. Normally people don't want yoga. We want bhoga. We want all kinds of bhoga. Yoga is the last thing that anybody wants. So who wants yoga? It is God who wants yoga. It is the divine who wants to do yoga through us and for us. In fact, Aurobindo said that all of nature, all the world, everything is nothing but his yoga. So God is only too happy when you approach him for yoga, because for everything he may not respond. He may debate or discuss or deny or say, "Bacha, ye tere liye acha nahi hai. This is not good for you." So you not even say anything. You just remain silent. And you may even come back saying there is nothing like God. But the moment you ask for yoga, then you see how quickly God responds. Because God himself wants you to do yoga. This is the purpose that he has created us for. He has created us so that we become united with him, that we realize him, and we join with him. And this is what he wants for us. So the whole secret and power of Bhakti Yoga comes down to this, that suddenly the person, that your goal itself is no longer just an abstract destination. It is a person, and it is the greatest person, and that person wants you to do yoga and wants to help you in every way, and will even go to the extent of doing the yoga for you. And what is that called? There is a very powerful word for that. It is that power that Aurobindo has said is the greatest power in the universe. And that is the power of this yoga, of Bhakti Yoga. And that power is called grace. So Bhakti Yoga is essentially grace yoga. Bhakti Yoga is essentially the yoga done through the grace of the divine, by the divine. Of course, there are many requirements on our side that we have to fulfill. Even then, there is a whole checklist. But this is what makes Bhakti Yoga easy. Not that it is easy for us to do Bhakti, because there are many people who do Bhakti, but Bhakti yogis, there are very, very, very few. Because to do Bhakti is not that much of a problem. You can just sit and make noise and jump around and you'll be a Bhakta. But to be a Bhakti yogin, to really want God, not just say a few things in praise of him, or to sing a few songs to him, or do some rituals, or gather during certain celebrations, to want God, to want to realize God, to want union with God, to seek God, that is rare. So the Bhakti Yogin is rare. But he has all the power and the privileges of God at his disposal, because God wants him. It's not just that he wants God. And here is another great thing about Bhakti Yoga. Because I just said that he wants God, right? So the word want came into that. So what does Bhakti Yoga do? We just spoke about the great enemy, which Sri Krishna himself called uh, Shatrun Durasanam, that the terrible enemy you cannot destroy. It's so terrible. And that terrible enemy, if we recall again, is Kama, or desire. So here, you don't necessarily have to kill desire. You don't necessarily have to say, desire, you are my enemy. I have to destroy you. Come on, let's fight and fight and fight, and you never win. Here, you can actually sublimate desire. You can try to make it a means for your progress. And how do you do it? It's very simple, but very hard to do. Again, simple doesn't mean easy. To want God. to desire God. And Sri Aurobindo has a very beautiful section on this in Synthesis of Yoga, where he says that desire cannot be escaped. It will come into everything that we do initially because that's a part of who we are. But it is possible that we can convert it by making our passion for God the sole and ruling passion of our lives. That in itself is quite difficult, but still much more wonderful than any of the other paths. And we'll get back to that. So making this passion for God the sole desire can then make you master this desire and use it rather than fighting it and trying to destroy it, which is again very possible, but I would say only the greatest yogis or sadhaks or munis or tapasvis can do. Sincerely to do it, it's really one of the most difficult things. But rather than trying to go constantly against it, you use it by focusing it just to God, just to the divine. And then it becomes the engine which powers your rocket. So this is another great advantage and great beautiful aspects of Bhakti Yoga, that it can actually use this foe, this great obstacle that you have, you can actually make use of it. Secondly, even with Jnana Yoga, as we said, the main obstacle there is your ignorance. And ignorance essentially means your experience of the world in this normal, ordinary consciousness. Because everything in this normal, ordinary consciousness, everything in our experience of it, denies God. Where is God? Can anybody show me? You don't see God. You can tell me, oh, everything is God. But do you really see God in everything? No. Do you behave as if God is in everything? No. So it is a mental belief, but it is not a real reality to do, right? So that is the state of ignorance. But that is precisely where Bhakti Yoga comes in. That for the Bhakti Yoga, he can use this state of ignorance again as a means for elevation because of this very belief that I spoke about. That if he really has this intense longing, this intense desire for God, this intense want, I want God, I want God, I want God, only God, that's it. Then he doesn't need to necessarily hate the world. He doesn't need to necessarily damn everything as just ignorance and darkness and falsehood. He will essentially be able to see God in everything. And this is why Bhakti Yoga is again so beautiful, because it is the most positive path. Because with knowledge, to renounce the world, you have to, in essence, have this vairagya. This is a very important, very commonly used word. Vairagya means that I have nothing to do with the world, and I completely let it go. Now, it has its utility. It's very important, almost essential in some sense. But with Bhakti Yoga, there is a big change there, because what you're renouncing is not the world, but your misunderstanding of it, your false ideas of it, and your wrong relation with it. In Bhakti Yoga, everything can be approached as an aspect and a manifestation of the divine. And this again is so beautifully brought out in the Gita, where he says that the person who worships me in all beings, to him I am never lost, and he is never lost to me. Yo mam pashyati sarvatra sarvam chamai pashyati, who sees me in all beings and all beings. Tasyaham na pranashyami sachame na pranashyati. And many other beautiful shlokas described. And we have Sri Aurobindo's experience in the Alipur jail also, where everybody, including his jailers, even all the prisoners, all the so-called bad guys and thugs, etc., they all became for him forms and manifestations of the divine. So the world can then become, rather than a prison, it becomes a playground between you and Krishna. Or from becoming a hellish and merciless place of death and destruction, it becomes a nursery where your mother is constantly with you and she is helping you, supporting you, and making you grow and nurtures you, your inner and outer being. And this Bhakti Yoga does for us. So we see how wonderful and miraculous Bhakti Yoga is, that it even transforms the dry and hard uh, Jnana Yoga and the very austere and very difficult Karma Yoga. They're also transformed. Desire is transformed. Even the experience of ignorance is transformed. And why? Because the Lord is the goal of the divine is the object. He is at the other end. And he comes towards you. You're not the person who's struggling. You have to call, you have to be sincere, but he comes to you and he does the yoga for you. He makes everything possible for you. And Krishna even says that in the Gita, he says, I am in them and those bhaktas who are constantly devoted to me, that I, Teshamaham Samudharta Mritya Samsara Sandhava, that I become the rescuer from the uh, ocean of death and misery. How? Because Atma Bhavastu, I am in them, and Jnanadipena Bhasvara, I lift the lamp of knowledge and I give them Buddhi Yoga, I give them realization. They don't have to struggle for it. I will do it. All you have to do is want me and call me, but do it sincerely and keep doing it until you get me. And you see the same thing in Sri Aurobindo's yoga also. Generally, we think of integral yoga as something that is very knowledge focused, knowledge based. Why? Because Sri Aurobindo wrote so many wonderful works, all from a state of divine consciousness, a work that is unparalleled. And he gave all the knowledge anybody could ask for. Seriously, if you want knowledge, this is the age to be born in, because Sri Aurobindo has come, and you can have all knowledge. You can have omniscience just by opening books and doing sadhana. You can be omniscient. Sri Aurobindo has done this for us. But because it is so heavy, the knowledge is so heavy and so great and mighty and powerful, we are tempted to think that the integral yoga of Sri Aurobindo is very, very knowledge focused. But let us listen to what Sri Aurobindo himself says. And I'm just going to read out something Sri Aurobindo says. He says, this yoga too is not a yoga of knowledge alone. Okay. This yoga too is not a yoga of knowledge alone. Now, so far we are okay. He's saying not a yoga of knowledge alone. So you could still say that knowledge is the thing, knowledge is king. Okay. You could still say that the other yoga is there, but knowledge is king. But look at what he says afterwards. He says, knowledge is one of its means, but its base being self-offering, surrender, bhakti. It is based on the heart. Let me read those words again. It is based on the heart. So આ યોગની જે પ્રતિષ્ઠા છે, એની જે foundation છે, it is bhakti. It is the heart. It is founded in the heart. Its base being self-offering, surrender, bhakti. It is based on the heart. And nothing can be eventually done without this base. And if you have knowledge, if you have great karma sadhana, whatever you do, if you don't have this base, nothing can eventually be done. So much importance Sri Aurobindo is given to Bhakti, so much that he has made it the center, the core, the very base and foundation of even the integral yoga. And even further, he says something extraordinary. He says, to know about the sadhana with the mind, meaning reading books, having discussions, doing a lot of research, listening to people, getting a very precise, accurate, very deep understanding through the mind of integral yoga. He says to know about the sadhana with the mind is not indispensable. It's not indispensable. He says, if you don't read the books, if you don't have discussions, if you really don't try to become a scholar or an expert or an authority or a great researcher in integral, that's fine. It's not indispensable. What is indispensable? He says, if one has bhakti and aspires in the harsh silence, if there is the true love for the divine, then the nature will open of itself. There will be the true experience and the mother's power working within you. And the necessary knowledge will come. So Sri was saying that if you have true bhakti, you can get everything. If you sincerely have that one element, it can bring everything. It can bring knowledge. It will also result in works for the divine, from the divine, of the divine, which is essentially in karma. So much importance Sri Aurobindo is given to Bhakti Yoga. And again, if you go back to the Gita also, there are lines after line where Krishna, after saying, for example, in the 6th chapter, by now he has spoken about the Karma Yoga, he's spoken about the Jnana Yoga. And in the 6th chapter, he also speaks about the Dhyana Yoga, which is, again, going back to Raj Yoga. So after giving all these yogas, how does he end that chapter? He ends it by saying, Yogi namapi sarvesham madgate nantaratmana shraddhavan bhajate yomam samayukta tamavata. That I've given you all of these yogas, all of these different paths. However, the best yogi, the supreme yogi, is the one who loves me with sincere bhakti. Even Shri Krishna has given it so. And again, I can give you so many instances from so many different chapters where he constantly gives this message with so much prem. Because if you think about it, yoga is unity, union with the true self, but ultimately union with the divine. And what is love? Another word for love is union. I would go to the extent of saying that yoga is love. That love or bhakti is at the core of yoga. It is what is ultimately the aim. That there are many people who think knowledge is the aim. And I won't say that they are wrong, but ultimately, if yoga means union, then we must say that because love is another word for union, all yoga has to come down to love, has to come down to this para-bhakti. And how do we do it in our lives? Now, all of us are bhaktas of Madan Shweta, of the divine, of Shri Krishna, in one form or another. How do we become bhakti yogis? And some of us probably already are, but it doesn't hurt to say a little bit about it. So I will. Again, as Sri Aurobindo also points out here, aspire in the heart's silence to have true love for the divine. It is simple. Again, not easy, hard, but it is simple. To want only the divine. How does that happen? we must look at ourselves, our lives, and see what are the things that we want. Now, why do we want them? The one common factor, the one thing that you will see in everything that we want is that there is a value, that we value them, or we have a value for them, and that's why we want them, and not for themselves. In them. Because there's something, like mulya here, because it has some kind of a meaning to us, a great value in it. That's why we seek it, we want it. So ultimately, what is it that will make us turn towards the divine is when we begin to value the divine. And how do we do that? We constantly focus on the divine. Because the divine is the treasure house of everything that is good, everything that is wonderful, but we don't look in the direction of the divine. So let us look in the direction of the divine. See what the divine is like. Let us meditate on Sri Aurobindo, on the mother, and see how much grace is pouring out of them all the time. How much they do for us, how much they love us, and what they represent. As the mother was saying, that Sri Aurobindo is not just a mere teaching, he represents a direct action from the Supreme. We have to be able to see that. We have to be able to know that and live that. So for us, the divine should be the one thing that has ultimate value, and at some stage, the only value, the sole value. Once we do that, then automatically we will be fixed. We'll be fixed on the divine. And then the floodgates of grace will open. As Sri Aurobindo even says in the first statement of the book, The Mother, that there are two powers that alone can effect in their conjunction the great and difficult thing, which is the aim of our endeavor. A fixed and unfailing aspiration that calls from above. How does that fixed and unfailing aspiration come? When everything else loses value and only the divine has value. And a supreme grace from above that answers. And wherever there is grace, you can be sure that it is the path of bhakti, that bhakti is there. Because while grace is there behind all paths, it is in bhakti yoga where grace is the factor. And it's something that we can all do. Again, not easy, hard, but it's something that is there for us, which Maharaj have given for us. And Sri Aurobindo is clear that this yoga can only be done by the grace of the Mother. So this yoga can only be done by those who are completely and integrally bhaktas of Mother and Sri Aurobindo. And that is something that we can, I think, strive for and aspire for.
Thank you, Govindji. This was really beautiful, touch to the heart. Anyone wants to ask any question, you can. Abhi log Siddha hai.
So everybody's in ecstasy right now.
No,
But yeah, I mean, just
everybody is taking.
just think about just yeah.
Very, very beautiful.
Yeah, just think about Mother and Sri Aurobindo, what they are, what they do to us, for us, and without anything asked for in return, and so loving, so much that they have brought down, so much, everything, omniscience, all knowledge.
Yes, one thing, Govindji, the starting point of bhakti, right? As you were alluding, is always the absence of something to start something. In bhakti, means to me many a time that it's not absence, it's a presence.
Right.
Just
Absolutely. And that's another very beautiful aspect of the integral yoga, because Krishna can play hide and seek, Shivagan is at the Kailash, but in this yoga, the objective is different, because the objective is transformation. The objective is completely changing every movement of our being, of our nature. Uh, when you really want it, when you call out, the mother basically comes rushing in, and the transformation starts. Like, there is this passage uh, in Savitri that I was just reading, which was really very interesting. I'll just share it. So this is from book 10, the book of the double twilight, canto 1, the dream twilight of the ideal. Uh, okay, so here Shungo says, the inconscient world is the spirit's self-made room, eternal night, shadow of eternal day. Now see how beautiful these next lines are. Night is not our beginning, nor our end. She is the dark mother in whose womb we have hid, safe from too swift awaking to world pain. We came to her from a supernal light. By light we live, and to the light we go. Here, in this seat of darkness, mute and lone, in the heart of everlasting nothingness, light conquered, now even by that feeble beam, its faint infiltration drilled the blind, deaf mass. Almost it changed into a glimmering sight that housed the phantom of an aureate sun, whose orb pupilled the eye of nothingness. But the one thing I wanted to focus here on is Sri Aurobindo uses a very interesting word. He uses the word drill. So it is almost as if the action of the mother's force, the mother's light, the mother's grace, the mother's love, the moment you call her, it starts drilling into this darkness, this nothingness, this obscurity, this pain and suffering, and this ignorance. And that light starts to drill. And it may take days, it may take months, it may take years, but that will continue to grow within. Her influence will be all around you. And from inside itself, her light will drill outwards into your life. And this is a very, very remarkable and special thing about this show. I just wanted to share this passage because that word is so interesting. Drill. It drills into this darkness that we find ourselves in today. And so to love the mother, to value the mother, to call the mother, to become the mother's, to want to become hers. That's all. And to stick to it, to continue to grow into her light. And she grows with you. She will drill into you from the inside.
very good. It looks like Govindji, everyone I think in the call is echoing the love aspect, what you just described so beautifully. And then see the why less questions are there is simply because everybody is in love. So where you are in love, there is no
There's no question. Love is blind.
there is no,
May I add for this special day, not only for the Sri Aurobindo birthday, but also independence of India. And as they mentioned, that India is going to be that light that's going to transform all of us from that focus. If you notice all the oceans, only one ocean has a name, real name, and it's Indian Ocean. So that's going to be all spread beautifully. So again, congratulations and happy birthday to all.
Very nice. Very nice. Yes, and that ocean has poured down and is now among us. And that ocean is the Divine Mother. Her oceanic grace, oceanic love, her oceanic presence, which has no bounds, no limits. What an amazing time to be alive, whatever may be the case. I mean, there are nothing but problems. But in one sense, it's a good thing, because when we see that there are nothing but problems, then we say, let us look in the one direction where there is nothing but no problems. There's nothing but happiness. And that direction is the divine. That direction is.
But isn't at somewhere Mother has said that having problem is the shortest way to reach divine. So maybe we are not seeing it. We cannot see it.
Like in Mahabharata, at least Kunti goes a step further. She says, Lord, give us more problems. Give us many more problems. So maybe Lord is answering that prayer, now. लो जितना प्रॉब्लम लेने का जब तक तुम लोग मेरे पास आते नहीं तुमको प्रॉब्लम ही प्रॉब्लम चलो.
Name was given by state by Vivekananda also.
Yeah.
No problem. So I think if anyone has any more question, then we can take it. If not, let's just have a 1 minute silent meditation, and then we can close the call for today. Namaste, everyone.
Namaste. Namaste, everybody.
Everybody.
Namaste.
Namaste.
Bye.
Good, good.
Oh.